We would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. That's it for the land acknowledgement. I'd like to quickly do attendance. So we have Deputy Mayor Anderson, Mayor Mills, Chief Moore, Althea, Ken, Bella, Gear, Cheyenne, and Simran. And we don't have Sohaz yet. Okay, so the first item on the list is approval of the agenda. So I'll quickly share my screen. The agenda was also shared previously.
Alethea, who is caller in user 1?
That's Chief Moore. Okay, so oh, that's not the agenda. Are you able to see the agenda on the screen? Yes?
No, that I believe that's the contact list for.
Let's try this again. Perfect.
Yeah,
That
there you
should
go.
be up now. Okay, so I'd like to have a mover and a seconder for the agenda, please. That's Althea. Do I have someone to second it?
I'll second it.
And that's Simran. And the agenda is approved. Any discussions on the agenda? No discussion items, all in favor?
Sorry,
go ahead.
The timing of the debrief for the task force. I thought perhaps some more time might be needed. All depends where we take it, though.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor of the agenda?
Here.
Bella? And Cheyenne?
Yep.
Simran?
Yes.
And Chief Moore?
Yes.
Perfect, and motion carried, agenda approved at 6:07 p.m. The second item on the list is approval of previous meetings minutes, and I will quickly share that. Are you able to see the embedded document? It should say meeting minutes. If not, I'll reshare. Okay, so I'm displaying currently the meeting minutes from last week's meeting, July 9th. Meeting was from 6 p.m. until 8:55 p.m. Again, the meeting minutes were shared as part of the agenda. Do I have someone to move the meeting minutes? Althea, someone to second the meeting minutes, please.
I'll second it.
Simran. Any discussion items on the meeting minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Here.
Perfect. Motion carried. It is now 6:08 p.m. Approval of the meeting minutes from July 9th, 2020 p.m. Okay, just navigating back to the agenda for tonight. We've reached the part for public participation via Q&A. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge that we have not received any questions from the public, either to the task force committee or through council. Does anyone have any comments, discussion items on this? Okay. So public participation is closed and it's now 6:09 p.m. So in one of our earlier meetings, we had made a motion to comment on who would be providing any type of communication to the public or to town council. And we had said that the chair, this would be the role of the chair. I'd like to put forward the motion to have the vice chair have this authority as well in the event that the chair is not available, or even if to tag team with the chair on any special events. So just putting a motion forward to have the vice chair have the power to also represent the task force. Do I have someone to move that?
I'll move it.
That was Cheyenne?
Yes.
Perfect. Do I have someone to second that?
I can second that. Kent Moore.
Perfect, thanks, Chief Moore. Any discussion items? Okay, all in favor?
Here.
Okay, motion carried. It's now 6:10 p.m. and this is to have the Vice Chair, Althea Casamento, speak to Town Council or make any communication in the event that the chair is not available. Excellent. Okay, the next item on the list is just a quick debrief on the training. We all had a chance to participate in the training last week, and for me, I thought it was very insightful, so I just wanted to get everyone's opinion, thoughts, and any takeaways that you may have had from the training. So I'll just do a quick, someone can just jump in instead of going around the table.
If you could just simply close the shared screen.
Perfect, thank you.
I thought the training was good. There was a lot of information in there that it was new to me and a lot of content. And, I think both the ladies did an amazing job at presenting it to us. I was actually wondering if we can, because there was so much content, and I think I had asked that, I know that we recorded it and it's for our use only. Is it possible for me to get a copy of it, because I'd like to go through it again in case I've missed. I was trying to take as much notes as possible.
I believe I shared a copy of the training in a Google, through Google link. If you have not received it, I can definitely recirculate it. Is everyone in the same position? You didn't get a copy of the training? Okay, I will share that. And again, it could just be my technology challenge, so I'll definitely recirculate it.
No problem, we're all learning. It's okay.
Perfect. Any other comments from the training?
I wanted to indicate something that I learned. Of course, we all know about different forms of racism through our own experiences, but the 7-8 different kinds that they had highlighted, there are some people who have never witnessed or some people who have never experienced it out there in our communities as well. And I think when we are doing our survey, it would really be helpful if we could include examples of these different types that people might not consider as racism. But then if we give examples like that, it could be possible or easier for people to relate to that and say, yes, I've witnessed something like this around me.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
Any other commentary, especially given the fact that we're going forward with doing a survey as well as doing stakeholder delegations to the task force? Any other comments, feedback that you can tie into what's to come?
Just in terms of discussion, the question would have to be posed very well, because identifying racism, it's something that someone feels and they don't necessarily have to explain. And I wonder if the examples might limit someone in saying, okay, I didn't experience this, I didn't experience it, I didn't experience it, then that disqualifies me. And just for discussion, not arguing, but just thinking about it. On the same issue, I recall we were asking about Carol Maitland getting involved. Did we ever get a response from that?
Yes, we do have feedback from Carol, and that is, I guess, a nice segue into the next discussion item, which is the survey. So if no one else has any commentary about the training, I'd like to jump right into the survey point.
So let me just, I guess I'll just comment on the training. It was obvious, I think, for most that the survey, or the training rather, was well done. I think it helped us to possibly narrow our focus and where we should be going as a task force. And I think, in addition to, I think as Simran pointed out, getting a clearer understanding of the definitions, I thought were important to ensure that we were all on the same page. So understanding the difference between equity and equality and racism and systemic discrimination. I think all that is important because when you're getting a survey and the results back, or you're hearing people come in via delegation and they're saying these things, we have to understand what they mean, so that we're able to digest that information and make the appropriate recommendation. So I think for me, it helped, well, not even just for me, hopefully for the task force, it helped us to really understand the terminology, because we're going to be hearing it quite a bit, and it's important that we recognize it, and that will put us in the best position to be able to make the recommendations that are necessary.
Perfect. Mayor Mills, did you have any comments before we jumped into the survey discussion?
No, I think that's fine. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like the other comments, I think, some of the definitions will be helpful as we move forward. The one thing that I think Gear brought up is an important point. As helpful as that training session was for us in drilling down on some of those definitions, we shouldn't necessarily expect that those who are coming before us to share their stories will be, well versed in all of the technical definitions either. So I think it's, it's going to be incumbent upon us to kind of read through, some of the storylines, what they're saying, and try to drill down on exactly what it is that they're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Cheyenne, did you have any comments? Okay.
No, I thought it was great.
Perfect. And Ken?
Sorry, I think you said Kent. Yeah, I thought the training was very good. I agree. It was a lot of content, a lot to take in, but I think both of the presenters did very well.
Perfect. And last but not least, Mr. Topping.
I enjoyed the presentation. It was a great overview of what we're working on with this task force. I went one step further, I think, at that meeting to suggest, and I still put that out there as an idea, that to have this kind of support in terms of facilitating what we were doing forward from this point, I think would be good. And I spoke at that meeting saying, Althea, it's a hard job chairing this crew, and it's hard to chair and facilitate at the same time. So I was hoping that we could maybe use this company or these two people again to help us with our work as we go forward to questionnaires, interpreting questionnaires, looking at the results and formulating ideas. So I wonder if that is possible, or do the other people think it's even necessary?
So I'll take a stab at this, and Deputy Mayor Mills and Deputy Mayor Anderson and Mayor Mills, you can jump in at any point as well. But from a task force perspective, we had already taken a stab at putting together a framework for survey questions, which I think was pretty robust, and that survey was circulated to the task force for review and input. As per schedule that we talked about last time, we have shared the survey with Carol Maitland, who has experience in putting together surveys, and she has taken a stab at providing some feedback and grouping the survey in an order that makes sense, and eliminating questions that are repetitive, and basically restructuring the survey using her experience, and rewriting the survey in a manner that is easier for people to navigate through. The questions are simple enough for individuals to be able to answer to. So the whole point is that the survey will be effective based on the framework that, in a sense, we provided to her. in terms of having the facilitators come back in, this is where I will lean over to Deputy Mayor Anderson and Mayor Mills. But at this point, you know, we only have a certain amount of budget, so we have to work within the constraints of that. And we also have a very limited runway. You know, we have an end date of September that we're working with. So bringing the trainers back on board could potentially delay the work that the task force has to do. Not to undermine the work that we're doing. I think we've already done an amazing job of putting together the content of the survey that I believe will be very effective. And with the feedback from Carol, I think the survey will be quite strong. So I can't show you that survey at this point, and I'll speak to that later, but I'll give Deputy Mayor Anderson a chance to comment on the facility.
Can I just say something just before? If that's okay?
Absolutely.
So Ken, I also agree with Alethea, where if we can utilize our budget effectively and wisely, I mean, bringing them back in, that's going to cost us. We can use that money elsewhere and utilize Carol as much as we can. If she has the skill set and you know, this work has already been done, let's utilize that.
I have some items to say as well too. I'm glad to hear that Carol's expertise will be brought in regards to surveys, but the concern I have is around having a critical lens on the work that we're doing. Right, the items and the points that the training brought out highlights the difficulties of us moving as a committee if we don't understand the issues. Right. And so it was the first time for many to take in the bit of information that they shared, but we've set out to do some anti-racist, anti-discrimination work. And if we are looking to tackle this big issue and it's understanding it's a big issue, it can't be shortcut, right? There shouldn't be a press for a timeline. There's a need to be effective and to do justice to the work that's being done. So if Carol can short the stuff on the surveys, then great. But in terms of having a critical lens on the work that we're doing, whether it be the interpretation of the survey, whether it be the way power plays out within this group, it's important for us to have that lens, right? And that's my thought on that. If we're going to do something, let's do it well.
So I'll put this question back out to the team. Is there anything in the survey that has been shared that?
Well, before you go there, let me just respond and try to make this abundantly clear for everybody. Is nobody is attempting to take any shortcuts. We have a timeline that has been identified and has been identified from the very beginning of the task force. The task force lasts for only a period of time, and we have that time that has been outlined. And so we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure that the work is done properly. The trainer, Amanda and Naomi, will be circling back with us. This was mentioned also at the very beginning, that they will be circling back when we get the results back from the community. And they will be there for a period of time where they will be able to address some questions with respect to what we've received. Carol, I don't want to shortchange Carol at all. Carol also has the lens that you're talking about here. This is not her sort of first time on the horse doing these kinds of surveys. It's been very clear in my dealing and conversations with her, and certainly if I could speak to that as well, that she's very familiar with the work that has to be done, the critical lens that has to be applied. And once you see the changes that has been made to the survey, you'll get a very clear sense of that. But to those who feel that the services of Amanda and Naomi would be valuable, again, they will be circling back with us. I should speak to the budget. There was an approval of the remainder of the budget at our last meeting for a total of $6,500. At first, it was $10,000 in addition to what was already provided for the training. But after some discussion at council table, that was whittled down to $6,500. And I'm not saying that that's not an appropriate budget. I think it is. But to Althea and Alethea's point, we have to be mindful of that budget, because we have to use quite a bit of that to engage in the marketing of what we are attempting to do so that we get maximum feedback, and there's a cost associated with that. So in addition to Amanda circling back with us, is there an opportunity to have her take a look at some of the work that we're doing at some other point. Well, that depends on the cost of that and the amount of money that we have left after we do our advertising. So there is a possibility, but keep in mind, she will be circling back with us after we get the results of the survey to help guide us in that way.
Perfect, thank you. The points that I wanted to make was that if anyone had any comments or questions that they wanted to change on the survey, you know, that was put out there to the team to provide your input on. So I'd expect you to provide your feedback. At this point, because we've already sent the draft over to Carol for her to rework, what I am proposing at this point is, once I have her final edits, I will be circulating that via a Google link for the team to review. And given, again, the short runway, what I'm asking everyone is to give up some time over the weekend. I know I'm asking a lot, but to give up some time over the weekend to review the survey in detail and provide any questions, comments that you may have to me as soon as possible. And then I'm asking for a sign off by noon on Monday. So the sign off would have to be through a Google voting process. So just simply yes or no, you approve the survey. And again, this is given the fact that we don't have the runway to be able to meet again in time for us to meet our deadline of September sometime to provide our blueprint to the town of Shelburne. So again, I'm going to be sending out the survey at some point tomorrow with the expectation that everyone will take a stab at the survey content, review it, and provide your feedback. Your feedback could be as simple as good, I approve. Monday by noon, I'm expecting this task force to provide your full feedback, full approval. And I will put this in an email for everyone.
And this is the draft survey, right, Alicia?
The draft survey has already been circulated to the task force, and I've asked everyone to provide input. I have received input from a few individuals, and that, along with the feedback, has been provided to Carol. Carol has now taken all of our feedback and the draft survey and basically reworked it. She's grouped the survey into groupings that make sense. So there's a clear introduction to the survey and where we need to group it based on specific categories. She has done that for us. She's simplified the language. She's added definitions in where it makes sense. So for example, provided a clear definition of what discrimination means based on the Ontario Human Rights Code, what racism means, etc. So all of that information has been structured in the survey. She has shortened it as well. So once I receive her final document, I will be sharing that tomorrow with the task force. Any questions?
Well, the question about the process. So what does Carol recommend we do to get this survey out? What's her plan for that?
So there are a number of approaches. So the survey will be hosted on the town's website. So basically we're driving traffic to the Town of Shelburne website to complete the survey. And it's the same thing, same approach that we use for the police survey as well. We've discussed about using a tool called Bang the Table, and I'm not sure how that works. That's something new for me as well. So I'd have to get more information on that. So basically we're going to be marketing to a whole bunch of different vehicles, but driving everyone to the Town of Shelburne. That's the central hub where the actual survey will be completed.
I just have a question because like let's say like we have the survey like on the town's website, like speaking like for my parents, like they would never know that there's like a survey like this happening. How are we planning to market the survey?
So that's where the role of the task force comes into play as well. So I would expect everyone on this task force to share the survey with your social contacts, with your group of family, friends, etc., your network, essentially. We will also be taking out marketing with local media, both on radio as well as in print. Carol will be helping us with drafting the content for that because, again, she has experience in that space. And of course, word of mouth. We discussed in our previous meeting as well to ask that we promote this on the town's social media platforms. So Facebook, we discussed the plasma screens. We discussed a number of different vehicles as well. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Yeah, just to add to that, and you pretty much covered it all. So there will be the ads on the Country 105, that space that the town has access to. There will be paid Google ads and Instagram advertising as well, targeted to specific groups and demographics. There will be bulk mail that will be sent. Carol and staff is working on the cost, and this is to ensure that the survey gets into the hands of all of our residents. Because as you can imagine, if we're using, to your point, I believe, Soha, if it was just the website, for example, or maybe Country 105, there could be a segment of the population that's not listening to Country 105. And so certainly we don't want to be missing any of the folks that we're intending to capture as it pertains to the survey. So there's going to be bulk mail, which will be delivered to all of the residents. There's going to be social media, as Alethea pointed out, whether it's our Twitter, the town's Facebook, the LED screens, and we hope to have the survey advertised in the Shelburne Free Press for at least a minimum of 2 weeks, possibly 3, but at a minimum of 2 weeks, again, to get maximum exposure.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to chime in here. How are we planning on making sure that our sample size includes all different demographics? Do we have a strategy for that? Because when we are not really, as you said, that the town will try to send out mass emails and we would be targeting as many people as possible, but how are we going to ensure that at least some people from each demographic are going to take into consideration that they respond to that survey, maybe a certain socioeconomic background with a different kind of educational background? Like, how are we going to ensure that? Because we all think differently at different levels within the community. So how are we going to ensure that? That is my issue. And also given that I did a couple of surveys like that for the Orangeville BIA, and they were public surveys where we were inviting public input. And I was in person present to take those surveys on an iPad at farmers market several weekends. And I was really disappointed at the amount of respondents that we actually got at the end. Out of even if you talk about, let's say, for example, we have a Facebook group that has 15,000 people, residents of Orangeville alone. And the total response, of course, we just think that we will, even if we get 10% response rate, that is like crazy high in marketing research. But I was disappointed. It was 0.2%.
Yeah.
So I'm not too sure how are we going to account for a legible response rate.
I'm not sure I have an answer for that at this point, but again, this is where I'll be pushing back to the task force to actively go out and promote, not out there in person, obviously, with social distancing, but we're actively promoting, the survey to our network and, encouraging everyone to complete the survey. I'm not sure if you have anything else.
Yeah. So let me just attempt to answer the part of that again. So there are different targeted ads that we're going to be using to reach certain demographics. And will all of them be 100%? No, but when we talk about targeted IG ads, when we talk about targeted Facebook ads, when we talk about using the social media account, another forum, for example, is the Shelburne Q&A. There are a lot of people who interact within that space itself, so getting the information out there. But I think the other key element with respect to making sure that it gets to every household is the bulk mail that we're going to be using, because that information regarding the survey will be going to all the homes in Shelburne. Now, I think to your point, Simran, and we saw this during the elections, where, we had people going to people's homes and getting them to use their iPad to actually vote. It was so convenient. And I think as a town, we were expecting the voter rate turnout to be much higher than it was with the fact that we were introducing technology where they could vote from their homes. And even with that, I don't think it was, that substantially higher than it was in previous years. And I guess the mayor could certainly comment on that. So you're always going to have those who receive the information and for whatever reason don't apply. But we're going to do all we can within reason from the town's resources. And to Alethea's point, we have to rely on our own inner circle. So for example, Simran or Soha or anybody, if there was something that we mentioned that you realize wasn't covered. So for example, you may say, hey, listen, guys, there's a cultural newspaper that a lot of people from the community, from a particular community, they read, for example. Then if that information is provided to us and to Carol, then maybe we could take out an ad in that cultural newspaper or that forum to say, okay, we got to be posting here because this is where members of a particular community vote and consume their information. So this is where we rely, in addition to what the town's going to do, we're relying at each and every person around the table to provide that feedback so that we're covering as much ground as possible.
Can I just add two things that I don't think that we talked about? There's Snap Dufferin. We can have access to them as well. We can talk to them and see if that's an option for us. And then there's In the Hills magazine as well. They have their website and their social media. We can try that.
I would like to add something to that. So realizing at the end of the survey, let's say we give it 2 weeks time after rolling it out, and at the end of 2 weeks, we realize once we have received all the responses that we haven't, I don't know if we have any screeners there, because the last time I read, there were no screeners that are talking about a certain education background or certain profession or a certain economic background of the respondents. So let's say we include those screeners, and at the end of the survey result, we realize that we haven't received any of the responses from people who are homeless or who are under the poverty line or people who aren't at a certain education level. So we will be losing that 2 week time in a crunch situation anyway. So how about, this is just a suggestion, we don't have to do this, but how about we already select a sample that is reflective of our original demographic and then do maybe a focus group with them. So at least we have a sample that is indicative of all these backgrounds. And we can be doing multiple focus groups, maybe online like this, like in an interview format where one of us can be asking questions, and these people could be people that we don't know, and we can assure them confidentiality of their responses. So that way we can say, so now I have a white family or a white man who is between the age group of 45 and 60, and this man is educated at a certain level. This man has a financial background like this, and these are his experiences in life. This is how he interprets what we are asking him. And then similarly, all these various backgrounds that we can, go into, peek inside and get all that information. And the authenticity of the responses can also be somewhat judged by somebody who's interviewing these people within the focus groups.
So I like the idea of a focus group, Simran, but this is something that would have to be done in conjunction with the schedule for the survey and the delegations that we're doing. I'm not sure if Deputy Mayor Anderson would be opposed to this, or the task force for that matter. Would you be opposed to leading a focus group of this sort, since the fact that you have experience in doing something like this?
Sure, I would love to do that. I don't mind. Even if it takes like a full-time hour of a week, I would do that. Because I think that will be truly reflective of what we are trying to achieve here. And then, because somebody who's homeless, how likely are they to respond to these questions, go online and, take the time out of their life and focus what is being asked of them, and how are they going to access this survey to begin with? And how honestly would they be able to respond to that when there are so many distractions going on, especially in this situation in life? So I think it is very important that you get that one-on-one attention with somebody, maybe a one-on-one interview, or maybe a focus group like this with 5-10 different people, and have these questions answered by each one. Number one, that can get us the survey response that we are looking for. And number two, that can also increase awareness. Because through my experiences, I've realized that there sometimes when people leave these focus groups, they've learned so much through each other's experiences as well.
Okay, so
I'm not sure what that's going to look like, to be honest with you. I mean, it's well-intentioned. I'm not sure how that's going to look like and how long that's going to take, to be honest with you. I'm not saying it's a bad idea for a situation where we have a considerable amount of time, but I'm curious to hear more details. Simran, I will say this, though, that the screeners that you're talking about actually exist in the survey, right? So when we talk about economic backgrounds, when we talk about education level, all that information is currently in the survey as we speak right now. And so the hope is that if we get the hands into the people that we want to get them in, that we'll be able to glean that information from the survey because those screeners are there. But the focus group, I'd like to hear sort of, I guess for the benefit of the group and for those who are not aware of how a focus group works, maybe Simran, you could explain how does that look like?
So a focus group would look like how, I don't know if some of you have signed up. I have so much time in my life. So I usually sign up where you can fill out some surveys and you get paid. Maybe, or you can go and attend these surveys where people are going to ask you, maybe let's say I am from Cadbury's company and I want to roll out a new product and I'm seeking feedback from the community on what exactly should that product look like, what are they missing in the existing products. So I send out a mass email, as you suggested that the town would be doing, and in that email I ask people all these screener questions. I say, are you between the age group of 20 to 30? What is your education background? Is your education background a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or up to school level, or what exactly is it? So we can ask all these screener questions in those emails, and we can ask these people to respond with the answers. So once the town or whoever is in charge of receiving those emails, they receive it, and then we divide them based on those responses into different groups. So we say, okay, so we want one person from this group, go with one person from the other group. And we can have these groups based on their education, their economic background, or all sorts of things. We can create all those demographics, and we can have either a mixed group of all these individuals, and we can decide the size of this focus group. And then once we have created a group with some common ground for all these people, then one of us can set up an online call with these people at a set time, at a set day, so that they are completely available while they are responding to these questions. And we can ask those people these questions one-on-one, or we can ask them in a group setting like this, like an online call. And we can take down notes on whatever their responses are. So this way we guarantee that we have covered all demographics.
I'm going to ask the mayor to comment on this because, again, as much as I believe it's well-intentioned, I don't think, and it's not because we haven't done it before, doesn't mean that we can't do it. It's certainly not in line in what the town has done in trying to solicit feedback, whether it was with Fiddle Park or even recently with the OPP, in trying to ensure that we got enough representation from the community, especially with prescribed timelines. So Mayor Mills, I don't know if you want to comment on that, because I'm just not sure how that could be achieved in the timelines that we're speaking of, but I welcome your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I share your concerns, Steve, with respect to the timelines, only because, you know, the way that I view our mission here is sort of, you know, divided into two schemes. One is essentially the fact finding portion of it. The second part, you know, is then distilling that information that we gather and you know, turning that into some sort of presentable form to council in the form of you know, concrete recommendations. So Simran, I mean, I personally haven't conducted focus groups. I do like the idea as a way of making sure that, you know, every single demographic that we're intending to capture is captured. But like, what sort of timeline would we be looking at to do that? Like, is that something that could run realistically run concurrent with the survey, such that, you know, all of that fact finding portion of our work is done at the same time and still leaves us enough time at the end to then, you know, do the work that's ahead of us and put that into you know, a list of recommendations for council?
I think this can be achieved within a 3-week time, including the 1 week of prep time and 2 weeks of a week and a half of response time, and then the last 3 or 4 days of the second or third week to conduct actual focus groups. And I think because you are taking notes, it will be easier to sort of analyze the data that we have received and interpret the responses into a solid form. I think 3 weeks is a pretty achievable time, because we're talking about a very small
Okay.
sample size here.
Sorry, I just wanted
For my
to say,
part then, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I'll just wrap up quickly. For my part then, I mean, as long as it's realistically achievable and you know, it's not, you know, ultimately going to delay the second phase of what we're doing, then my inclination would be to side on the more, or on the side of more information rather than less. So yeah, if we can do it, let's go for it.
I was gonna say, I mean, I've never really like made a survey and like sent it out, so all this is very new to me, so I'm just learning as I go. But one thing I thought of is, like I said, like Simran had a really, really good idea and I like it a lot, but how are we, even though Shelburne is such a small town, there's still like 8,000 to 10,000 residents, I think, here. Like that's gonna be a lot of people to cover. Like how are we gonna do that in just 2 weeks? And then like every time you ask a question, like, and you have to note it, and then all of our notes, because we're all going to be doing something, because we can't just leave it all in one person. Like how are we going to bring all our notes together? And like it's just gonna, I feel like it would be a little bit like maybe hard to put everything together and get everything done.
I understand your confusion on that. So I think we can target different groups. It doesn't have to be just a one-person role. I think we can target the business community, and we can say we're going to pick 5 different kinds of businesses. And then we can send out an email to, let's say, 25 of those businesses that are representative of the type of business we are looking at. And we will hope that at least 4 or 5 of them will respond. And then we will choose 5 of those people, or just 1 or 2 of those, depending on what exactly is it that we are looking to achieve. We will pick just the representative of that sample. So it means, I'll give you a very basic example. There might be, let's say, when we cook rice, how do we check if the rice is cooked or not? We don't start eating the whole pot. We pick a few pieces of the rice and then we try and check it is cooked or not. So the same way we will be doing with this sample. We will just be picking people who will be representative of certain aspects of what we are looking for, and we will be conducting this focus group with them, not all the population, not all the residents of the town.
So how would we, so the task force is looking at primarily racialized, marginalized groups, not necessarily entirely, but certainly a focus. I think that's undeniable at this point. But unlike businesses, which would be certainly a lot easier to identify and pick 5 businesses downtown on Main Street and then call them, send out emails. When it comes to these groups, I guess maybe to Soha's point, how are you proposing to identify these groups and then reach out to them, talk to them, get them the information? How are you proposing to do that?
I'm thinking that we can target all the avenues that we can get our hands at. Maybe the small business enterprise unit can target businesses outside of the downtown. Then if you have a BIA, they can target the businesses within BIA. And then we can reach out to the churches. We can reach out to schools to help us out with some students who are primarily usually in contact with teachers or other staff and do these kind of things and are actively working on improving the community. And we can include teachers through the UGDSB board who are within Shelburne, or if somebody has contact with schools and directly teachers within Shelburne. So these are just, I haven't really thought about it because I wasn't aware that I will be doing this today. But these are just some examples, and I think we can definitely find people who are able to target all these different demographics through whatever contacts they have in community. So let's say, for example, the chief that we have with us, he can target these police officers within Shelburne Police Services, right? So we can get that kind of a sample from there. Maybe you guys can help us out with the sample from the council members or the town staff. So we can have people representative of each sector within our community that way.
So,
and I think that could be an achievable target within a week.
If Simran's willing to do the work, why not give her the opportunity to look into it and bring back to the group the logistics in terms of allowing her to talk to folks at the some council staff, or with people at council staff, to see how it can get done.
That sounds like a good plan, Gear. What I was going to ask you, Simran, is what would be the objective of that sample size? Are we asking the same questions that we're going to be posing to our stakeholders, or are you taking a sample of the survey questions? And you may not be able to answer that right now, but to Gear's point, can we take this aside and then come back at next meeting with, a full plan of attack, how we're going to approach this, who we're going to target, dates, when we're going to start executing on, and when we expect to get results back?
So going back to the survey questions, I think it could really tie in well with the questions or the survey that we have already created. My only, like as I suggested in my previous email to you, Alethea, that people don't tend to respond to surveys where they have to write a lot of answers, right? Typing becomes very hectic for people these days. So this focus group can help us out with those kind of responses as well, because I'm sure, I don't know what platform are we going to use, and if these questions will be mandatory in that survey that we are expecting to roll out. So if unless these are mandatory questions, I don't think people are going to respond to any questions that need them to type out a lot of answers. So we will use the same survey questions so that it can tie right into what we have already created. We don't want to waste any more time thinking about new questions, because at the end of the day, our objective is the same. Maybe top 3 or 4, 5 things that we want to achieve through that survey can be achieved the same way, but then through a focus group.
Okay, so why don't we just leave it for now? I think maybe some of the concerns that you have, Simran, will be addressed once you see the revisions Carol has made, because I do agree with you. There was originally on the survey questions where we were looking to gather quite a bit of information from the person who's filling it out. But she has made some revisions to shorten that and to make it more efficient, which is what Alethea had mentioned before. So I think from that perspective, I think you'll be satisfied. But maybe when you have a little bit more time to think about it, because obviously you're just bringing this up for the first time, if you could maybe just come back with the to our next meeting, maybe with just even a skeletal outline as to what the strategy is, and then that way we could all look at it and then make a determination as to whether it is something that we could achieve within the timeline. Is that okay?
Sure. So I understand we have time sensitivity here. So what I will do is I'll work over the weekend. I will have something ready by Monday, and I will send out an email to everybody.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right. It's maybe unnecessary for me to say that at this point, but I don't think she was questioning the survey. I think she was just offering another means of gathering data for the survey.
No, I wasn't suggesting she was questioning. I was saying is that what I was responding to is she made the comment about filling out a lot of information on the survey, and I'm saying that has been tightened up with the revisions that Carol has been made. I understand that what she's proposing is in addition to the survey, and I agree that if we could do it, like the mayor said, if we could do it, let's do it. But we'll wait for the email from Simran, and if it's workable, then we'll do it.
Perfect.
Who does she need to talk to at the town?
Well, we don't know. She's gonna let her send the email first with a skeletal outline as to what she's proposing, and obviously she'll have some more time to think about it. And then we'll examine it and determine whether it's the right path to take, whether we should be speaking to somebody at the town or not.
Just before we jump off the topic of sort of broader outreach, Simran, I think raised a good point, and when she, I think our faith communities offer a great outlet, for outreach, and we shouldn't overlook those. I think most faith communities within our community have mailing lists or some form of newsletter, and that may be one easy streamlined way of reaching a lot of people.
Okay. Is this something that we need to have a vote on from the task force, or can we just go ahead and have Simran do the work over the weekend?
I think she could just bring forward the skeletal outline. I think if there's going to be a vote, it will be after what she brings back and there's discussion and everybody agrees with that pathway, then I think at that point there would be a vote.
Okay.
I just want a question for Steve and Wade with the looking at the survey that was done about the police force. Were you happy with how that went in terms of the survey mechanics we just talked about? Did you get enough people, get enough sample? Could you make decisions based on it?
Yeah, I mean, for my part, Ken, I'll be quite frank with you. I mean, it wasn't determinative, as far as my decision, but it definitely was helpful. How many responses did we end up having, Steve? I mean, it was somewhere north of 400.
Yeah, that's what was, yeah.
So that wasn't a terrible response, particularly compared to some of the other surveys that we've sent out. Just having read through the comments in particular, I did get the sense that they were actually fairly representative of the general feelings of the community. There were about 50-50. Some people, were all gung ho OPP for a variety of reasons. Others, wanted to maintain our municipal force at all costs. And that was kind of the general feeling I was getting, in the community too. So, whether these are statistically reliable, probably not. But I do think that they do offer, at least a viable snapshot of the mood of the community.
And I'll just add to that briefly. And when you hear that number, it really echoes the point by Simran. And Simran, I totally get it. When you hear 400 people and a population over 10,000 people, you're thinking, geez, that's not a lot of people. And it is disappointing to some degree because you're expecting on something that you believe is really important, like an election, that you're going to have a lot more people turning out. So I guess, Ken, to your point, is it a useful avenue based on the objective that we're trying to achieve? Yes, it's one useful avenue. And this is the reason why we have to take a broader approach to try, and again, to Simran's point, a broader approach to try to maximize the type of response that we need to get to this survey. So hopefully in conjunction with the things that we've mentioned, again, the social media, the bulk mail out, the website, the LED screens, and now with what Simran is proposing, that those numbers will be higher. But the truth is, when it comes to elections and surveys, unfortunately, sometimes, unless you're talking about giving away free turkey and money, the turnout is not really that impressive. But we'll do the best that we can.
I see we have a new voting member.
Yes, he hasn't seen a lot of me this week, so yeah, he's chimed in.
I think that's the demographic that Simran wants to reach. We can do a focus group on this little guy right now. Anyways, Alethea, go ahead.
Okay,
Sorry.
perfect. Moving on, no worries. So I think we've pretty much covered the survey, and next on our list is the stakeholder list. So I'm going to share my screen.
Alethea, while you prepare the screen, I just want to ask, has a survey with racism ever been done before in Shelburne, and do we anticipate any kind of what's the word, repercussions, lashback? Do you know what I mean? What's it called?
So I'm not aware of any racism specific survey. Perhaps the mayor or the deputy mayor can comment on that.
And will we get?
I don't think we have.
Yeah, there certainly hasn't been anything formal. To your point, Bella, I mean, it may not be entirely unexpected to receive some negative comments, but to be honest with you, I think in a way those comments may add value to the work we're trying to do. As difficult as that may be to hear, I think it is important for this group and ultimately council to know that, there are certain members of the community that may feel that way.
I'm just getting a few butterflies in my stomach. I mean, I don't mind. I do.
I'm hoping, Bella, that it's not going to get to a point where we're going to have to hire security. But listen, it's when we put out a survey for the Fiddle Park and the OPP and the Shelburne Police, you would think that those are somewhat benign surveys, and there was a lot of commentary that I'm sure the mayor will certainly confirm. Very passionate individuals. When we had Grace Tippling Hall open, there were a number of people who came in that said a few things that I don't think some of us sitting at the table anticipated. There were times where we were in the grocery store and, in the egg aisle, and someone would pull us to a side and say, here's my thoughts on Fiddle Park, or here are my thoughts on the Shelburne Police. So is there a possibility, because this is a very profile task force. I mean, a good number of the community knows who's sitting on the task force. Could you expect possibly on something like this that somebody may approach you with either signs of approval or disapproval? I would say yes, to be honest with you, that you know, that's something that you could expect. But you know, these things happen, but you know, as I think we all agree, the work has to continue.
Just on that point, Cheyenne, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think you experienced a little bit of that in relation to your work to promote the march, right?
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot of people that reached out that were happy and positive that we were doing it, but we went to hand out flyers at the grocery store. I went to hand one out to a guy. He was like a white older man, and he was just like, no, I don't agree, like right in our face. But at least he was aware of what we were doing, even if it was negative. Like at least we were getting our message out there, even if he didn't agree with it.
And I think, yeah, to what everyone has just said, it's important for us to get, you know, it's expected that we will get negative responses on the survey. I hope that we're not individually accosted out in public as a result, but uncovering some of the uncomfortable truth and the hard truth that potentially exists in the community is critical to the success of this task force. So I'm hoping that we will see some honest and raw feedback from the community. Okay, so let me share my screen again. Okay, so a number of you have provided some input on the contacts list. And so this is essentially a list of individuals that have reached out to either myself or Deputy Mayor Anderson to say, yes, I would like to participate somehow, somewhere. And a number of you have also provided a list of additional contacts who have reached out to you individually. So this is a comprehensive list of everyone so far, including the status of, yes, they have confirmed that they would like to participate, or pending response. So at this point, I guess I'm looking for approval of the list. Does anyone have any additions, any concerns? If not, we'll work with this list and select a few from here to reach out to. Does anyone have any comments on the list?
Yeah, I was wondering if through Steve or Wade that we could get a member of the BIA to make a presentation. I tried to track somebody down through emails and didn't have any luck, but be interesting to hear them.
Yeah, I can get a contact. And the secretary from the BIA obviously has a mailing list for all of their members. And then you know, one of the other outlets for the business community would be the Economic Development Committee. And Carol actually has, I think, a fairly broad contact list for most businesses, you know, within the town outside of the BIA boundaries. So.
Okay.
And Alethea, do you remember Gurmant Singh, the leader for the Sikh congregation that came to the interfaith dinner?
Yes, I believe someone had, so I have reached out to him already. I haven't received a response, but I believe there is a representative from the Sikh community who have been contacted and is interested.
Yeah.
So I can fill that name in at a later date. Any other questions, comments on the list of stakeholders?
I guess the only thing I'll say, Alethea, I mean, from my vantage point, the list is, I think, a really good representation thus far of different segments of the communities, whether individuals or community stakeholders. And I certainly appreciate the efforts of those who have added to the list. And I think to, again, Simran's point that, and through the BIA, that was actually a good point there, Ken, and economic development as well, that will reach some of these businesses as well, to, if they're not comfortable to come in and be a delegate before the task force, at least certainly will use their contact information or their list, hopefully, to provide information regarding the survey.
Perfect, that's a great point.
And maybe possibly we can use these people or these groups as a contact for the focus group as well.
Okay, noted.
What about the various churches or newer churches and the previous ones that existed?
So again, this is for people to come in and do a delegation to the task force. So I'd like to have everyone at the table, but I'm also very aware of the fact that we've got a list of over 30, well, 25 stakeholders to do a presentation. Just looking at the list alone, I think we are out of runway in order to achieve our objectives. So I think I'd be looking to trim this list down at some point. We can definitely take off the Headwaters Collaborative Group. They have volunteered to essentially be a vehicle to get the survey out. They will not be doing a presentation. So they'll be there to support us in any way, shape, or form outside of doing a presentation to the task force. But looking at the list right now, I think it's quite extensive.
Okay, so then I would propose that we, because I believe you're seeking approval for the list and the questions to go out. So I propose that either the discretion be left to the chair to make the reduction, or there'd be a decision by the task force to decide on which names or entities will be left off the list, because obviously we need to get things rolling. So either they're leaving the discretion with you, or a decision should be made with respect to this list, because this has been circulated for quite some time. And so if there's an opportunity to maybe shorten the list today, then I would propose that we do that. But Gear, to your question about the churches, we'll certainly reach out to the churches to get their feedback by way of the survey and or the focus group potentially. But there are some members here that of at least a couple of the churches that will be coming in to do a delegation before the task force if they remain on the list. For example, there is Pastor Sterling, for example, that has indicated that he would like to come in and do a presentation before the task force. You have Jay Wagstaff that is on the list. We know that he was there at the Black Lives Matter march as well. So at least there's a couple, but there, I agree with you. There should be obviously more of an attempt to hear from the churches as well.
May I also recommend another name, please?
Sorry, Gary, what were you going to say?
No, let her finish.
Okay.
I met somebody a few months ago at a RBC Future launch, and I think that could be really beneficial if we can have them come in and speak, and that could be beneficial to all the things that they do for the youth. So we can sort of have a suggestion for the town to include them in any kind of mentorship programs and stuff like that for our racialized or marginalized youth in the community.
Okay, so just put for the purposes of now, yeah, thank you, the RBC, and maybe we could just sort of go through the list as a group and see if we could narrow down. And Alethea will speak to this as well. The goal is, because we have quite a few, so even if we're left with 15, for example, I'm not saying it has to be 15, but if we were left with 15, the idea would be on the delegations would be to hear possibly two individuals on sort of one Zoom meeting, for example, or maybe even three, depending on the timeline that we allocate to them. But we're trying to get a minimum of two at one particular meeting, or possibly three, and that may help us to get through the list depending on the amount of people that we have on the list altogether, okay?
Right. So just looking at it right now, we would be looking at a 2-hour meeting for these delegations, at least 2 hours. Okay.
That's quite possible, that's right, yeah.
So pardon me, Gary.
There was some committee work done with poverty, Dufferin. And that's fairly recent, 2017, wasn't it? Isn't that some data that we could pull as well too?
I missed the first part of what you were saying. So you're talking about poverty data?
There was some committee work done in regards to poverty in Dufferin, and so in terms of marginalization around economics, some information might already be available in regards to what's been happening in Shelburne, and it's a fairly recent study. I think it was 2017 or 16.
Yeah, and so what I'm hoping, Gary, is some of these organizations, for example, if they stay on the list. So, for example, let's say it's DCAP, for example, they might be able to come in and provide data like that and say, look, from their perspective, as it relates to the town of Shelburne, this has been the experience based on the questions that they have been asked. So I'm hoping that some of that data will come through some of the presentations by the stakeholder. But Alethea will get to the questions in a second that we will be asking for approval as well. So go ahead, Alethea.
Okay, so just going through the top of the list, we have DCAF. They are ready to come in. Does anyone have any questions or concerns with DCAF doing a presentation?
No.
Okay. We've got a community member, Andrew Cunningham, who actually he's already put together a presentation. So he identifies as Black. Does anyone have any concerns with Andrew coming in?
No.
Maybe we could probably just do this for the efficiency of time. If people could just take a second to take a look at the list. I mean, we could go through all 30 plus items line by line, or if we could take a look at the list, and if there are ones that people feel pressing that should be removed in the interest of time, if we could just identify those. How many in total do we have, Alethea, so far?
32.
32. So if we did 3 in a meeting, and so we're looking to potentially do this over a 2 to 3 week period. Is it possible if we did 3 in a meeting that we could cover the majority of this list or all of the list? Is that possible? Because if we could accommodate these folks, I'd rather try to accommodate them rather than eliminating folks who have demonstrated an interest. But is there a way, if we're doing 3 per meeting and we're doing this for 3 weeks, is it possible to accommodate this list?
Off the top of my head, I can't answer that. I'd have to map it out.
If we were to take anybody off the list, I see like as we're going through the list, there's a lot of like just community members. Like maybe if we could have 1 community member or 2, there's like 4 or 5 of them. Like I feel like that's just a lot.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments with respect to members and or any other either individuals or organizations on the list?
Just a general comment, Steve, and you know, to your point about, you know, the viability of working our way through this many in a short period of time. I think we would have to put some sort of time limit on the delegation presentation. You know, and you know, we can decide whatever's reasonable. Like at council, a delegation has 15 minutes. I'm not saying 15 minutes is appropriate here. But I think there has to be some sort of expectation that, you know, that they're coming in with information that is kind of, you know, condensed already. You know, and I think we need to ask them to do some of that legwork as well, so that, you know, what they're offering us is already in sort of an organized package to some degree, that we can then take and distill even further. You know, but I think there have to be some parameters on this, so that we're not, you know, literally spending 30 or 40 hours with delegations.
So that's a great point, Mayor Mills, thank you. For the ones that I've already reached out to, I gave them 15 minutes,
Okay.
an additional 5 minutes for Q&A. If they needed more time, I've asked them to let me know upfront, because we have individuals scheduled at specific times. So far, everyone was okay with the 15 minutes.
Okay.
So I think we can continue using the same time frame going forward.
So I'm just going to pose that.
So I just want to point out, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I've been doing a lot of talking, go ahead.
If you are doing 3 per meeting, you're looking at 9 meetings.
Okay, so we're talking about over a 3 week. We're talking about over a 3 week period. So that's what I'm just putting it out there, whether that's possible or not. I think we should do our best to shorten the list if we can. But we're looking to do this over a 2 to 3 week period.
That would be like 3 meetings a week.
So
let me throw this out there as sorry, let me throw this out there as a suggestion. Does the entire task force have to be involved in every single delegation? Like I'm wondering if the task force can sort of split up into maybe 3 groups.
And break it down. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and we each take a third of the list. So, you know, that would mean essentially that each group would be receiving roughly, you know, 9 or 10 different delegations, and then we as a whole group can reconvene and kind of share what's been presented, just to make it a little bit more manageable. Because yeah, I mean, Soha's right, that's a, you know, a large volume of meetings.
I like the creative approach. I'm not sure how to manage that, so I'll take that offline and figure out logistically how that can happen, because I think the sessions have to be recorded too, and I'm not sure how to do that. So we'll figure that out, but I like the idea. Thank you.
I have something to add.
Yep.
Can we not ask these people who are planning on, you know, attending the delegation, can we not have them like maybe create 3, 4, 5 minute sort of like a video presentation, and then it can be emailed to everybody ahead of time, and then we can allot 5-minute time for Q&A in each meeting. So we've already come prepared. We have watched everything that they have to present, and then we are there with them for 5 minutes, and we can do our Q&A each meeting. So even if we are spending 15 minutes every meeting with 3 people, that will be easy to achieve for us, isn't it? I don't know, or maybe we are asking too much by asking them to make a video.
Yeah, and that's it's an interesting idea. I just for the sake of staying on track here, I think what I'd like to see happen first is let's work on the list and determine who's on the list and who's not going to be on the list. Then we could talk about what Wade has suggested, because I think getting an understanding of what we're doing so that these people could be contacted in one form or the other, we should be making that decision because that's what was scheduled for today. So let's decide on the length of the list, and then we can start talking about how we're going to get these people to come in and whether it's going to be broken down into groups or otherwise. So could we just maybe just start on the list?
So someone mentioned community members. Is anyone opposed to removing these 3 names? Or is there any value in keeping them?
Were they asked, or did they present themselves?
No, so these were just names that we thought of.
I mean, they're all valuable, but I think if we do go with Mayor Wade Mill's approach of splitting up our team here, then we can include them. But if we don't, then we may have to pick one community member.
Yeah, I agree.
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no,
Is
I
someone
was just
talking?
saying I agree with that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Derek Davis, I don't know him personally. My parents are friends with him, but I know he's a Shelburne resident and a police officer, so I just think it'd be interesting to hear what he has to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of, I'm going to be honest, I'm actually excited to see what these people have to say, just because they're from here, and I want to hear their experience to help us form the recommendations.
Okay.
Okay. So it may very well be, because I agree with you, Bella and Cheyenne. I think a number of these individuals that have been identified, either those that have been suggested either by Ken and others, and or those who have contacted and expressed the desire to want to come in and speak, we certainly should hear from them. So that's why I was asking, is there a way, and the mayor suggested one way, that because keeping in mind, we're not trying to do this in 1 week. This list, if we keep it as is, we are looking to contact these individuals over a 3-week period, or have them present over a 3-week period. And so maybe if the decision is, let's keep the list, and then let's figure out a way that we could accommodate these folks within a 3-week period.
Okay.
If that's what if the task force feels all these individuals and entities are valuable and we would get helpful information from them, if the decision then is to keep the list, and keep in mind that some of these people may decline, and so the list may automatically be shortened. But if it remains as is, then maybe we could talk about how we could accommodate them over the 3 weeks.
Okay, perfect. I'm not familiar with the last handful of names, so I just want to make sure that these individuals or these groups that are coming in can speak to the issues in Shelburne specifically, as well as provide the recommendations. So I don't know if anyone can comment on these lists.
I'll comment that I've spoken to Dufferin County Community Services, Calvin Victim Services, and the Public Health Unit and the North Dufferin Wellness Center. Briefly outlined what this task force was about and asked them if they'd be interested in receiving an invitation to come and present with guiding questions that they would get about their presentation. So they're all Shelburne based. They're stakeholders mainly in the area of health services and community services. So they're ready to go if we want them.
Perfect. Okay, that helps. Thank you.
And
So-
I can reach out to somebody from RBC Future Launch and see if they are able to custom create something that can address to how they can do whatever they do related to racialized or marginalized people within Shelburne.
Okay, so if I could just ask the question, is with the list as proposed, keeping in mind that some may decline, but if not, as a task force, are we then satisfied with the list as is? And then if yes, then we'll figure out a way as to how we'll go about contacting them. So are people satisfied with the list as it stands right now?
Question.
Go ahead, Anthea.
Who is HCIA?
Headwaters Community, Jennifer Payne. I can't remember the name of the group. Ken, do you remember the name of the group?
Yep, it's Headwaters Community in Action. They're a group in Dufferin County that I would call them more of a facilitation group where they try to get other things going. And our very first speaker on the list, Andrew James, is a committee member or board member with HCIA.
Okay.
So we can
And
take,
so,
sorry, we can take them off the list of they're not doing a delegation. They will help us get our communication out.
Sure.
okay. And now I noticed you have the family health team here. And if you scroll down, you have many healthcare providers on here. Is it necessary for you to have family health care team? Then you have North Dufferin Wellness Center. You have can we not just choose one in each?
Yeah, we
instead
can,
of all of
because
them?
in this area, we basically are served by one family health team. I think you can cut out number 21 because the North Dufferin Wellness Center is part of the family health team for Dufferin County.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to add, like obviously the more people we have or the more representatives we have, the better, like the more experiences, like it will give us more information and more input and help us out a lot. So if there is a way like we've had many different suggestions to keep the list the way it is and have, I don't know, groups doing, watching presentations and delegations at once, I think that would be really good.
Okay, so are we voting to keep family health team in, or are we taking it off?
I'd suggest we take it out because as pointed out, it is rather duplicated with number 28.
Okay. Are there any other?
Who is New Horizon?
The New Horizons is a seniors group that operates out of Dufferin Oaks, and I was not able to contact anybody in that group, so that's a cut or to do, one or the other.
No,
Maybe-
we should definitely include the
You should
senior.
have a seniors rep.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
I do agree with that too, because there's no other person on there that captures that demo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can follow that one up. I'll follow that one up and get a contact person.
Ken, is Dave Hawthorne a member of that?
Alice Jones is the chair at this time.
Okay. Okay.
I can't find it. While we're talking, I was trying to find Alice's phone number, but I can't find it.
What
Okay.
about those two new businesses, particularly the Black owned businesses that open on Main Street and Owen Sound Street?
Well, they would be part of BIA, wouldn't they?
Are they on BIA? Because I mean, I'm sure they're facing racism.
Yeah, but if you're open, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Mills, but if you are a business on there in the main, you have to be part of the BIA, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. So any business owner pays into the BIA levy. So whether they're an active member or not is a different story. But technically speaking, every business within the BIA territory, which is essentially downtown, it is a member.
So you wouldn't need to add them again because they'll already be part of that.
Okay.
They probably wouldn't be missed, Bella, because let's give Simran the opportunity to come back with the focus group, because that might be, for example, two businesses, as you point out, that you may want to be subjected to this focus group, for example, to get information. So I think when she comes back on Monday, Simran, that might be an opportunity to maybe get some information directly from them if you feel, and the task force feels, that they should be singled out somehow.
Okay, that makes sense. And in the same spirit, I think some of the churches that Gare mentioned earlier should be focus of one of the focus groups. Okay, so moving on. So is everyone okay with the list? We can close this item.
Yep.
So I'd like to have someone move the list as is. We will work with this list going forward, and naturally some individuals may drop off because they are not able to participate. So can I have someone move this list?
Move.
That's Althea. Someone to second it?
Yes.
That's Soha.
Yes.
Any comments? All in favor?
Yep.
Okay, motion carried to move forward with this list of stakeholders. Time is now 7:26 p.m.
Alethea, I just have a comment on Way's suggestion. If it is, you made the excellent point of indicating that the videos have to be, or the delegations have to be recorded. And I'm just wondering, if we do decide to do that, just to maintain the integrity of it, if we are breaking down in groups, I just wonder if either the chair or the vice chair should be part of these different delegations or not. So that I just put that out there, that even if it is being broken down, maybe the chair and the vice chair are part of these subgroups that are being struck, if that's what we decide to do.
Okay, that's a good idea. And maybe we just have to leave it as video submissions only, and we vet it, and yeah, we'll have to figure it out. Okay.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I do wonder if asking for a video submission might limit people's participation. But just to put it out there.
No, Gira, I would agree with you, and some people may not feel comfortable doing that. But I just think we contact them and present it as an option.
Mm-hmm.
But if the majority feel that they would rather come in and they feel more comfortable doing it that way, then we'll accommodate them.
Okay, perfect. So next on the list is to approve the stakeholder strategy. So again, the communication was shared with the task force, I believe, last week. Just minimize my screen. So
sorry, Alethea, is it the strategy that's next, or is it the questions? Did we cover that?
I guess strategy and question.
I'm wondering if the questions for the delegates.
Yes, so this is what I have up on the screen.
Okay, all right, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
So communication to stakeholders, and so we've got just the content that introduces the key questions that we're asking of all the delegates, and the questions are essentially: as a key stakeholder in the community, are you aware of any barriers to access or discrimination for individuals in our community? If yes, explain. If you're an individual doing a presentation, what anti-Black racism and discrimination have you faced? And I guess I should add here, in addition to faced, you've seen or heard of. What have you done to improve, address the situation? What would you recommend the town implement to combat racism and discrimination in our community? Are there any other solutions, recommendations you would like to share on how we can make our community more inclusive? So this is the proposed, and this is where I need the task force inputs. Do you have any comments, any changes that you would like to make on the ask of the stakeholders, both from community group or individuals?
I think those are good questions.
Okay, so do I have any other comments? I heard Althea. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Sorry, I do. You know where it says, what have you done to improve the situation?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people of color are feeling fatigue from having to explain over and over, so they may not have done anything. And I want them to have that space to be able to put that down.
Okay.
That the responsibility may be on the white community now to actually learn actively, as opposed to us having to address the situation.
Okay. So how would you suggest that we rephrase this question?
So it's right under what have you done to improve and address the situation?
Mm-hmm.
We could put, because I'm personally feeling a lot of exhaustion from having to explain, but I want to be on the task force, so I'm going to explain. But I'm trying to think of the lay person out there that is feeling this. The question could be, if you do not want to address the situation, would you like to explain why?
Okay.
I don't know. We could change that wording.
Another thought too, and that's a great point, Bella, about experiencing things. And I think maybe Cheyenne could maybe even comment in the sense of young people feeling that maybe they don't have the space or the opportunity to even express how they feel, or given the space to do that. And so what you see nowadays is a lot of organizations coming out and saying they're now creating space, a safe space, for example, for their racialized employees to feel a sense of protection, or maybe speak to others that may be going through similar incidents. So I wonder if part of that should be, what have you done, or do you feel that you've been given a space to have these discussions, for example?
A safe space.
Like,
do you feel you have been given a safe space? Just a thought.
I think that's a great thing to add. That's one of the things I was talking with Alicia about, is that like some kids may feel like they're not heard, or they don't have a chance to be heard, whether that's in school or around town at all. But I just thought it was really important in the survey to put, do you feel like you have a space to be heard? Do you feel like you can talk to anybody about what's going on? So yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, like kind of relating to what Cheyenne said, like I know because I've had these experiences like in school, like when you go to the people that are supposed to help you, you're always shut down. Like, I'm just gonna be really honest, like the white person is always just favored over you, and you can feel it. Like it's not just like, it's not like, oh, just because I'm like, I don't know, like a minority and they're white, they're choosing them. Like you actually feel it. So you continuously kind of feel like shut down. So then people after that, they're just like, I'm just not even going to address it. Like I feel like there's no point in trying.
Yeah, I feel like your feelings and experiences can be dismissed.
Yes.
I think those comments and questions reflect individual experiences. What we're looking for with these questions is to have groups in the community present to us. And I think those questions are good ones to include in our survey, but I don't think that whole range of questions was appropriate when having groups present to us. We want to know what they're doing.
So I think the question is valid, Ken, for those individuals, for example, community members who are doing presentations to the task force. So we have a mixture of both individuals as well as groups coming in.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to answer, the organizations have to answer that on behalf of
I think it's important then that we distinguish that when we send this information out, because
Absolutely.
each of the organizations I spoke to was quite interested in knowing what they should prepare, how they would prepare for a presentation and not get ambushed, was the words one of the guys used. You know, we want to come with a presentation that outlines what our organization is doing. So I think we need to make sure then some of those questions are appropriate for individuals, but perhaps not appropriate for groups.
I think if 3 people of color in this group just mentioned that similar concern of safe space, we should put it here.
Sorry.
Yeah, I also
Sorry,
wanted
pause
to
for a
add, like,
second.
I feel like even if they're individual experiences, they are important because they are experiences that all of us go through. So even if somebody were to represent us, I think it's important that they mention these experiences because they're experiences that are happening to almost every POC individual.
Okay, so I think there is an opportunity to maybe Ken's point, to maybe separate some of these questions and where some could be addressed specifically to the organizations and those that are appropriate for individuals who are coming in to the task force where their experiences are going to be more personalized. And so maybe for some of these questions here, they could be addressed for individuals that we're reaching out on the list. And then again, we have others that are designated specifically for organizations.
So the 3 questions that I've highlighted on my screen, does that capture what we would want from the individuals?
Yeah, I'm trying to
Well, yes
reword
and-
number 4.
I was going to say yes and no. Item number 2. I know there's been some difficulties with our family health teams that people have rejected doctors of different colors and different races. And so I think that's a fair question to see what their organization has faced with that, because they've had to deal with that from their patients or their clients.
Okay.
Good point.
Okay. I mean, the same could be said with number 4. I mean, the organization, based on their feedback, could potentially address that information as well, as to why, from what they've heard, why individuals do not want to report or want to explain sort of what they're going through. So that's also appropriate. So it seems like maybe the only, so maybe if you, I see you're nodding your head there, Ken, so that might be appropriate for businesses and individuals.
Yeah.
It seems like maybe the only potentially contentious one may be number 5. Ken, do you have any thoughts? Sort of, you've heard from some others on that. Is there maybe some rewording of number 5 that you think that could be used for both individuals and organizations?
Yeah, I think you could say, has your organization found it necessary to, and so on. Has your organization found it necessary to give a safe space to address?
Okay, there you go. And I think that's a fair compromise right there. That would address both individuals and organizations.
That's good.
Okay.
So you're saying to replace number 5 with this question, Ken?
Yeah, number
Alicia,
5.
can you scroll up a bit?
Yeah, replace number 5 with number 8 from what I saw.
Okay. Are we okay with question 5? Would you recommend what would you recommend the town implement to combat racism and discrimination in our community? Very good.
Yep.
Are there other solutions, recommendations you would like to share on how we can make our community more inclusive? That sounds good.
One thing I wanted to say for number 7, because we also have, like, for example, like one community member coming, let's say they're not an organization, they're not like a company, they're nothing. So I think maybe we can include individual in there, or like maybe they don't have to answer that question, but I think it's good to include that, because what if they're just a community member representing and sharing their thoughts?
Okay. So can you repeat what you're asking?
Yeah, I think the number got changed now for number 4. So maybe we can, wait, where did it go?
Number five.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, so maybe we can all say like, or you can say, have you as an individual, or if you have an organization, maybe we can say it like that.
Okay. So essentially the same question.
So we could say, have you as an individual, or if you're a part or representing an organization, found it necessary to provide a space for individuals?
A safe space.
That's the individual certainly wouldn't be providing the space. Certainly, I think the expectation would be that organizations would be providing the space. I guess the question for the individual is, do they feel that they've been given the space to express potentially? And that way, organizations, when they see that question, they sort of know how to address that in their presentation, if that's something that they are doing and sort of want to tout. And then individuals that are coming in, they'll be able to speak to whether or not they feel that they've been given the space to have their voice or voices heard.
Yeah, that's even better.
So I can almost just leave that as a question by itself, and I don't need to combine it with 5. Is that fair?
Can I comment about the tone of this? If we're inviting groups to come and present to us, and we don't, a lot of us don't know much about any of these groups. We want to know about their group. It's not an inquisition they're coming to, and I think these questions are guidance to our task or our mandate. They're not mandatory questions to be answered. I think they're guidance. Does the group feel that way, or do you think they need to be answered like an exam almost?
I think this is a very...
Can you say more about what you mean?
Well, if I was coming to this group, if I read the mandate of this task force and I was invited to speak, I would want to come and talk to them about what my organization was doing, and particularly would answer 2 or 3 of the questions. I don't think I would be answering all of them. They've only got 15 minutes for one thing, you know, so they need to tell us about their organization. They need to see where it fits into what is the mandate of our committee, and then perhaps answer some of the questions. But I don't think it's necessary to have them answer all of them.
So, and a good point. So the key question for me for these organizations would be item number 1.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I also need them to provide recommendations. And I think given the environment now, it is fair to ask them, have they provided a safe space for individuals? And given, again, I'll support that by saying, given the environment, you know, everyone has experienced trauma. So whether you identify as BIPOC or not, I think it has affected, or at least I would assume that it's affected everyone in some way, shape, or form, what has happened. So has the organization done anything to create a safe space where individuals can speak, can share, can vent? I don't know.
I think maybe to Ken's point, you know, if we say something, you know, like please try to capture as many of these questions as possible through your presentation, and if something is missed that the group, you know, clearly wants them to address, then we could maybe follow up with that specific question through the Q&A portion. But you're right, Ken. You know, I don't think we necessarily have to be so prescriptive to say, you know, you will answer A, B, C.
No.
But you know, these are the sorts of things that we want them to be, you know, cognizant of when they're preparing their presentation.
Any other feedback?
I'm thinking about it. I think the question also provokes them to take up these issues if they are not, right? And that's part of the work, I think, of the committee, of the task force, to to create some awareness and that folks start to think about some of these things, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
No longer okay to be silent and to ignore, whether it be your employees or your staff or your committee or the people that you're serving. It's no longer okay to be, in the sand about these issues.
The one thing I'll say is that in speaking to a few of these people that have reached out, to your point here, is, they themselves understand the work that's at stake. They understand what's at stake. And many of them, at least in their belief, are taking very bold and decisive action. And so, I agree, they should be able to look at these questions and address what they feel that they can. But I would like to believe that, when they're coming to do this presentation, especially as Alethea pointed out, in the climate that we're in, those who have reached out have a clear understanding of what the mandate of the task force is. So they know what they're walking into. There's really no ambush there. They're coming in to provide a perspective that represents a segment of our community. And to your point, Gira, as to what they are doing as an organization and how they see themselves being a part of the solution moving forward. And so that's all we're asking them to come in and do. And I think these questions at least allow them to trigger and help prepare themselves for the presentation that they're going to provide.
And I think to that point, Deputy Mayor Anderson, a few of the organizations that have reached out to me directly, they are aware of their current situation, and they're looking for ways that they can put measures in place. So I don't want to put anyone, in an uncomfortable position where they can't answer or where they don't want to participate. We definitely want everyone to come in and participate in some way, shape, or form and provide value to the task force. So how we structure the questions is key, and I think we've captured that based on Mayor Mills's comment. Please try to capture as many of these points as possible. I think that should give individuals a comfort that they can answer as many as they can and to the best of their ability, without feeling too uncomfortable to the point of not participating.
Sorry, Alethea. The point of taking on racism is to address your discomfort or our
For not
discomfort.
So there's a difference. So not participating. So I want people to participate. It will be uncomfortable. Just having the conversation is going to be uncomfortable, but I don't want to deter people from participating in the uncomfortable conversation.
Okay.
Okay.
But I think we should pinpoint some questions from here that unfortunately may cause discomfort for some people, but they're important for our task force to gather just for us to formulate recommendations.
So then, going back to some of the earlier comments, do we want to make perhaps question 1 as mandatory for organization, and then the rest do we want to go with that approach?
How about we leave the question as is, and whatever they choose to tackle, they tackle. And if they don't tackle some of it, then we pose some questions to them about why not.
Yeah, I would agree with Gear and the mayor's comments and Ken's comments as well. We provided them with a framework. And to your point, Alethea, we don't want to discourage participation, but we certainly given those who choose to come in a framework as to what they feel that they could best address based on their experiences and what they feel comfortable that they can address it. If there are follow-up questions, certainly I think they would expect that. This is not a one-way sort of stream where they're just giving us information and we're not asking for information. So I would suggest leaving it as is, with what you have there in parentheses at the top, clearly stipulating, trying to capture as many of these points as possible.
Okay.
It's Kent Moore. I do agree. I think with Alethea, I think we have to be very careful how we're asking those tough questions. And You know, we also want support from these organizations and agencies also moving forward.
Okay.
We want support from these organizations without defeating the purpose of why we're here. So we do want them to answer the difficult questions. And I think as leaders and stakeholders in the community, they should be up to answering these questions. It's very important.
Yes,
Yeah,
I definitely
I
agree.
don't have a issue with the questions. I think it's how they're asked. With I think Alethea addressed that about a minute ago. I think that's important.
I mean, for me, I feel like they're very like straightforward and basic. We're not asking too much, but we are asking what they're coming for. And the whole thing is to know about experiences of discrimination and racism. I don't think it's nothing too specific that would get too deep. It's just kind of general.
Okay, so we've spent some time on the questions. Are people satisfied with the parameters that will ask individuals and/or organizations to capture as many points as possible as is? And if so, then maybe we could get a vote on that, and then this could be circulated to the individuals and the stakeholders to get that ball moving. So, Alethea, maybe you could take it from there.
Before I go to vote, there's a last comment or a last sentence in the introduction. A copy of the final recommendations will be shared with you and the public to ensure transparency. I guess this is to you, Deputy Mayor, and this and Mayor Mills. Is that statement a fact? Will we in fact be able to share the blueprint with stakeholders at the end? Or should I just delete that to be safe?
No, by all means, you know, the recommendations that this task force ultimately make to council will be done in, you know, in open session. It'll come in the form of a report attached to our open meeting agenda. So, you know, these organizations, along with everybody else in the community, will see them.
Perfect, thank you. So with that, we will move to a vote for the communications to the stakeholders. So can I have someone to move the revised communication?
I'll go.
That's Soha. Do I have someone to second the communication?
I'll second it.
Cheyenne. Any other discussion items? All in favor? Excellent. Motion moved or motion carried to approve the revised communication. The time is now 7:52 p.m. and I will be sending out a revised version of the communication to the task force tonight. And I am losing my screen. Okay, perfect. And the next item on the list is the task force project plan. So the task force project plan it's still in draft stages right now. It has the original timelines with presentation starting tonight. So given the fact that we're almost at time, I will update the project plan and share that with the agenda for next meeting. And we can go through it and revise it accordingly. But essentially it maps out from the next presentation all the way through to, I believe it's September 14th when we present to the Shelburne Town Council. There may be an extra week in there that we're slotting in to accommodate the fact that we use today for debrief and to approve the survey and the stakeholders and so forth. So I'll update the project plan and I'll share that with everyone. And that's essentially all I had on the agenda for today's meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
No.
Okay, so I think today was a very productive meeting, guys. We got a lot covered and some really good discussions. So Thank you very much for all of your input and your participation, and happy to see Shine and Soha getting comfortable and sharing some really good insights as well.
Yes.
So great job, everyone. And of course, Ken and Ken, thank you very much for your contributions as well.
Lisa, just before we break, I wonder if Steve and Wade could comment on what's possibly going to happen with the task force being initiated at the county level. What our connection might be, just giving a heads up on that.
Good point. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Steve.
Thanks, Wade. So just a point of correction. So it's not a task force that was created at the county. It was the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which is something that's going to be in existence longer term. The task force, as you know, is only for a period of time. The terms of reference and the committee itself was recently approved as of our last meeting. And the idea is to go to the public with notification, I'm assuming on the County of Dufferin website and their social media, where they'll be looking for 8 to 10 members to join that committee. So we're just in the preliminary stages of it. It's really to address maybe a lot of the issues that we're talking about now on a longer term basis. But they're just getting out of the blocks right now. So there won't be that opportunity, which I suspect where you're going with this, Ken, to really sort of coordinate and dialogue and to see what they're doing and maybe try to be lockstep with maybe what they're trying to accomplish, because of the fact that by the time they finally get out of the blocks, we'll be wrapping up our task force and our recommendations. So we're truly taking the lead. And quite frankly, I think I'm proud to say that the county is really taking our follow here in a sense of what we're trying to do. So they're really looking to us and some of the things that we've already done to help guide them in what they're doing. So that's where they're at right now. But I would suspect, again, by the time they get their members onboarded, our task force would likely be coming to a close at that point.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else to add, Mayor Mills?
No, just other than what I had mentioned at the last meeting, that, in terms of the longer term work that's involved within the town of Shelburne, I think it's quite reasonable to expect one of this task force recommendations will be, the establishment of a standing committee that, is to sort of pick up the ball then and carry a lot of these recommendations forward. And to tie that back in, I think that's really more of the mandate of the county committee. It's a longer term standing committee.
Perfect, thank you. And Bella, do you have any closing comments?
I just want to make sure that, yeah, I would like what maybe Wade said. I would like to establish a permanent committee here in the town hall to hear an echo. But I'd like to establish a permanent, but I said I don't want us to be afraid as a community to move forward, to ask people serious questions, even if it causes discomfort. I can't emphasize that enough. And I think people are ready. White people have come up to me, No Frills, Jordan Wilson, whoever it is, and they've said, we like that this is happening. So I think, and the majority of the people in the PIA walk, thank you, Cheyenne, by the way, to your peer for organizing that. The majority were white. I mean, they're ready for this conversation. So I don't think we should be afraid. What I have butterflies for are for those minority folks that are keyboard warriors. That's what it. And Alethea, thank you. You're doing a great job sharing.
Thanks, Bella. Althea, any closing comments?
I know, but thank you for the great job that you've been doing. It's excellent.
Okay, Simran?
I think we are on the right tracks, and I really like what we're doing. From the community that I represent, I think I've alienated a lot of people, and all the more reason we should be doing this, and we need to continue to do this, because I do not want my son to be a representative of that kind of community. We have a lot of work to do within the minorities, and I'm ashamed of how people are responding to what we are doing as a community. So I think all the more reasons we need to take this more seriously, because we don't realize what happens within these realms of people of color as well. So we need to do more work there.
Ken Topping?
Oh, my final comment was a question to the two local politicians. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Gear Harvey?
Appreciate the opportunity to get to know my.
And Chief Moore?
Yeah, sorry. No, I have nothing further to add. Thank you very much.
Cheyenne?
Sorry, I missed what Gear said. I totally missed what he said.
Not here either.
No, I said I appreciate the opportunity to get to know my neighbors better.
Who's your neighbor?
All of us.
Oh, I get it. Peace.
Did you want to confirm that, Gear? All of us is your neighbor, right? That's what you meant?
Yes, all of you, except Simran. She's way down the road, but that's all right. I go to her town for ice cream.
Perfect.
I'm on
Who's
Victoria
hosting
Street.
Red
What are you
Barbecue?
talking about?
You're in Shelburne?
Gear, there's Blitz, black-owned ice cream there. Come on, what are you doing?
Simran, you're in Shelburne?
Yeah, sort of. Yes.
Okay,
Remotely.
Next
All right,
Remotely.
all right.
next conversation. Cheyenne.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And Soha?
Nothing much. Just thank you for everybody and giving me the chance to be here.
Awesome, awesome, thank you. And just in closing, and to go back to Ken's point, part of my recommendation that when I presented to Shelburne Town Council this week was to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee established, so that hopefully will be one of the recommendations that as a task force we're putting forward that can support that recommendation. So a lot of work is being done on multiple fronts, and I think with this task force and the work that we're doing, I think we'll definitely be a key change driver and leader when it comes to tackling discrimination. So thank you everyone for your time. We are out of time. It's now 8:01 p.m. and I think we can officially close this meeting. Thank you everyone and have a great night.
Night all. Thanks.
Right.
Good night,
Very
everyone.
good.
Night.